So today we'll have some time about Agile. We'll go through Agile, but let me start by introducing myself. Okay? My name is Amod Desai again, and I stumbled into Agile way of doing project management like about 4 or 5 years ago, when I really first heard the term like Agile. Like nobody knew about what's going on, and doing some more research and then doing a project in Scrum, I really found that this is really the way to do things, and I really believe in it. I have a conviction in doing this project management in Agile way. So I kind of started imparting knowledge, sharing knowledge with my peers, as well as training people who did not know Agile. So that's how I am here, and I have created some kind of a curriculum in which I give training. This is just an extension of what I've been doing for some time now. So that's my short introduction. What today we'll cover is there are many aspects of Agile, right? Agile is umbrella term. We'll cover on Scrum. That's why I've said Agile Scrum training. Okay, so we'll go more deeper into Scrum. I'll discuss more about it later on. Some initial ground rules. What we'll do, we have about 1 hour 45 minutes. We'll put 15 minutes after 1 hour 45 minutes for question answer session. Anybody really wants to ask a question in middle of that 1 hour 45 minutes, please raise a hand. But I would say that we'll keep question answer at the end. I would really urge that. Unless and until you are going to miss your thought, please don't interrupt. That's our goal today. And our start would be Agile, some historical facts, then Scrum, and then Scrum essentials, going in details. So let's begin. Before we start, any questions before we start? All right, so let's begin, okay? So that's our agenda. We covered through. We'll do some history, we do some essentials about Scrum. So an umbrella term, right? What is Agile? Agile, as you know, is not really an HDLC, no brainer at all. It's not a bouquet of best practices. So it's not like, okay, do this, you're Agile. It's not like that. All right, it's kind of self-organizing team. We'll go into that later, and of course, it's not a one silver bullet that you can say, I'm going to save money no matter what. It's basically how you do it is important. So we'll dwell into more part of it. But there are various flavors of Agile. So Agile being an umbrella term, you can see XP, you can see test-driven development, you can see feature-driven development. You will see so many other aspects of Agile. Scrum is one of that aspect of Agile. Scrum is one of these framework in which you kind of do certain steps that would lead you to completing your Agile way of project management, right? So we'll go more deeper into it. I just spend few seconds. You can read this. Okay. These are the list of descriptions for Agile just for people to know, what is Agile, the definitions. Here, I am trying to tell you what are the differences between the waterfall, that's an HDLC, what's the V model, and an Agile. It's more for educative purpose. You can read it later on. So let's go to again Agile, right? So Agile is we had this brain people, very smart people who are doing things in a way where trying to find out what is the manifesto of Agile. What does it stand for? What are its values? How you can do a project management in not a HDLC way. So in 2001 at Lord Snowbird's Key, 17 important people came together in trying to make a manifesto for Agile. It gives a framework. So they decided that we will value individuals and interactions above process and tools. We'll value working software against the comprehensive documentation, which is so very much for a particular HDLC. We will have a customer collaboration instead of contracts, and we'll respond to change. We'll go into that more deeper, but that was the values that they define overall as a framework. So under the Agile Scrum umbrella, we're going to dwell more into what is Scrum. So let's take a deep dive into it, okay? So what is Agile? Agile process. Again, going through your Scrum process. Scrum is what? It's an iterative incremental process. It's team-based approach, it's developing systems, and so on and so forth. Things are going to be interesting as it goes ahead and ahead, because I'm still going on at a very high level. So have patience in going on the next slide. Hope everybody can see this slide. So this slide I picked up from one of our Australian rugby team. So where does this the Scrum word comes from? Scrum is nothing but a method where a rugby team picks up the ball in middle of the game. And there are two teams who are head-to-head with each other, and they are all interlocked into their skills. They are trying to pick up the ball from the product manager who is in middle, and then they grab the ball to get it to the goal. So that's the idea of how the word Scrum came into the picture. Okay, so that's where this picture came from. So what's the history of Scrum? History of Scrum, if you see, it started in 1995, where Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, they came together to really form the real framework of what is a Scrum, what is an Agile, under Agile umbrella, how you can, what are the methods that we will be seeing very soon. And when they came across, they wrote actually a book on the framework. Mike Biddle, he took it further to a next level by actually defining how can Scrum can be taken into your into actual real practice. Have any questions? No. Okay. And so on and so forth. Okay. So from here on, we will start spending more time into the actual process of Agile, the Scrum, and where it starts from. At the high level, we see this is HDLC. I hope everybody knows what is HDLC. It's a software development lifecycle, in which we have a three-way triangle where we say requirements are fixed, resources and schedules. They can be negotiated. So it's more of a plan-driven HDLC process where a project plan is created. We define resources, we define who are our, what's our requirements in the beginning, and then we follow the plan as normal. What does Agile do? Agile identifies what is the value that can be driven for a particular project. It identifies that following the plan is not important. Following the value delivered, that is important. So in here, we put resources, that is the number of people who are going to work, as constant. The amount of schedule, that's the time boxing of the schedule, that's going to be constant. But the requirements can change. Why requirements can change? Because they have to be responsive to the market. Okay, so that's why responsiveness to the change develops the value for a customer. What they decided, say, a few months ago, that not be valuable when they deliver it after a few months. So the idea of change should be accepted, it should be honored, and it should be valued so that whatever comes out of the development, it is of value to the customer and not based on the contract. So if you go to the Agile Manifesto, in the initial stage when we decided, we said we'll have customer collaboration instead of negotiated contract. So that's what drives the value. Okay. This is another slide about telling about what is where we started. So if you see an HDLC, typically we have a project plan. We decide 6 months project plan, 26 weeks. We are going to deliver a particular software, which we thought about it would be before 26 weeks. That's when the requirements was gathered. That is a straight line. We know what is the plan, what's the target. Okay, boom, we are going to hit it. What you do in Agile actually, after 26 weeks, maybe 6 months, that whatever we thought about may not be valuable. If you see on a strategic plan for a company, within 6 months, the market is changing. It is the amount of responsiveness that is required for any product or a shelf life of a product is reducing over a period of time. So when you develop a product or a process, it might have to change again in 6 months. So the target for delivery is always moving. So how do you manage that change? How do you manage that in your development of your system? How do you manage that in your development of your process? How would resources be able to respond to that change that is market driven? It's a very important understanding that if you don't have a framework that makes you deliver that value, your company is always going to be lagging behind. When you say your company, means the company which is developing the product for the market, right? So understanding that adaptation of change is important. You have to have a framework that tells you or allows you to make this change as the market responds and as the market responds and as the market changes. So that's why you see there's short sprints or short steps that you can take a feedback and make a change. That's how you see Agile is more value-driven. It responds to the market, and also it responds to the common understanding that, okay, we adapt a product, but it's going to change. So you make best decisions based on what information you have at the present. Okay, so that's what the major difference between a plan-driven SDLC project and then a change-driven, value-driven Agile project. So I'll make a note here. Anybody's got questions so far? I'm breaking my own rules, but okay. Okay. So this is another slide where we go deeper down. So what we spoke before was at the very high level, where we spoke about plan and value. Here we are speaking more about process, where if you see a typical HDLC process, it starts typically from a planning, then analysis, design, and then you end at deployment. But if you see in Scrum, Agile, you break that process into small steps. So you have a fixed iteration, fixed sprint, fixed amount of time, say 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then you break those activities into smaller steps to take you down to the end target. So we will go ahead. As we go ahead, we will dwell into what is a sprint. So if you see a sprint has got plan, analyze, design, build, but at the end you will see the deployment takes place. That's when the releases start. So that's the difference between in the beginning you are doing certain planning, but you're not deploying your software. But as you go ahead, you start doing your releases, small, short releases, and that's where the test comes in the picture, and that's where you end up responding to the change from the value, for the value. Sorry. Okay. This is another way of comparing your SDLC along with your Agile. So here, what I'm trying to show you is you have an SDLC process where you plan, you do your build and test. At the end, you do an acceptance testing, and then you deploy, right? The same method can be broken down into smaller releases where you see a simple box. You see this box over here that shows that you're doing your Agile sprint in a shorter period, and you're moving that along. So when you do an initiation of a project, so there's a vision by say a vice president saying that, okay, we need to reach to a market to a certain product, say a pricing utility, and you're trying to develop that. You don't know what the product is about. So whenever you're trying to even envision the product, we can employ the framework of having it as a Scrum, and then start catching the requirements for that particular product, and then move on from that phase into a different steps in a smaller step. Okay. So typically, if you see how does it work? Okay. So in the initial stage, when you're in initiation, you can say there are only you can say there will be one vice president, one project manager or a product manager, one techno architect, and maybe one requirements gatherer, person who writes requirements. There will be a small team in the initial phase who will be creating a product, who will be creating a product just on the paper. That deliverable will be creating a business case for a particular application that needs to be built in future. That's your initiation. That's a pre-project phase. As you go further, when you're doing more intricate design, that's when the team composition will change. The team composition that time may be, along with the technical architect, you will add maybe a technology lead. You'll add a software developer into it who will do a small prototype quickly, and you will add a tester into it who can do some test scenarios and provide feedback for the prototype, so on and so forth. As you go on to the construction, that's when your actual team is going to be, right? So the framework remains the same. The team changes over a period of time. Your product changes over a period of time, but it's certainly giving you the feedback or the value for a customer as the time approaches and as the Scrum, as your cycle approaches, right? Okay, so we come to this screen where so I'm quite not for, by purpose I'm quite, okay? I want people to just take a look at this, get the feeling into what is this view about. So if you see in the previous slide we had initiation. In the initiation we had smaller sprints. When you are in this cycle, these are different cycles within a bigger cycle. So if you see at the SPAM, this is another way of looking at your release, the entire release, where you say that you can have multiple releases over a period of time. Within the release, you will have smaller sprints, and within the sprint, you will be doing your design, test, and build. So this is another view which helps you to understand what is Agile. Okay. So far we are doing good. We are doing good. Okay. So far we've just touched upon what is Agile in a very high level, right? So we talked about market, we talked about market dynamics, how we can respond to the value that is provided by a software development's life cycle, and vis-a-vis your Agile Scrum. We understood what is Scrum, how is it going. Now we'll go into actual framework, the real tooth and nail about what are the teams, what are the team composition. We'll see who is a product manager, who is a Scrum master, what are the different cycles within the Agile. Here now, what do you say? As we go, we'll see that definitely the framework helps you in building the software that calls for not just the technology brainchild, or you can say not just the technical skills, but it also calls for real team building, real self-organization within a team. You have to be very honest among your team members, and because that helps in reduction of the documentation, that helps in increasing of the collaboration. So this, from here on, we will see that this cycle starts in a way that helps the team to build itself and become self-organizing. So let's jump into the more essentials of Agile Scrum. So this is the big picture, really, of your framework. This picture helps you in understanding what are the cycles within an Agile. Okay, if you see, to start with, it's a daily cycle, the sprint cycle, and the release cycle. I hope everybody is familiar with what is a release cycle, because it comes in your SDLC process. You know, a release is 26 weeks. Typically, the release cycle is that number of weeks, or you can say number of months to start with. Sprint is something new that has come in the Scrum. Sprint cycle can be 2 weeks for application-driven given process. For example, you are developing a civil CRM application or a SAP application. 2 weeks is a good enough. 2 to 3 weeks is a good enough sprint duration. But if you're going for a typical Java-based, .NET-based application, you require about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. So that's an ideal duration of a sprint. What is a daily cycle? Within daily cycle, you have a stand-up meetings, you have your user stories, and you have continuous testing. So those are the daily cycles. Do we have any questions here now? I think I am having questions here. Yeah. Huh. What? Pardon? For mobile application would be a custom-based application. 3 to 4 weeks is very ideal. Yeah, 3 to 4 weeks is very ideal for that. Okay. So if you, we'll take each and every one component of your cycle as we go in the next slide, right? But this overall picture, if you want, we might come back again and we can display them. What is this picture about? Okay. So here I have laid down the components of Scrum. You definitely have Scrum roles. We'll talk about who is product manager, product owner, who is a Scrum master. We'll definitely look at what is sprint and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's take a roles. Let's try to look into what are the various roles within a Scrum. Initially, the most important role is product owner. Who is a product owner? Product owner is a person who can take decisions on the product, which is to be built. He is the owner of the application that is being built. He makes the call whether any feature needs to be in or out. And he's the one who does your sign off. Typically for a team is the client who is going to be a product owner. Can there be 2 or 3 product owners? Yeah, sure. There can be a team within as a product owner. But certainly there is one entity that's called a product owner. Who is a Scrum master? Very common understanding. Scrum master is understood to be a project manager, but in a way it is not. Why it is not? Because Scrum master is not responsible for developing a product. He is not supposed to be a technical person. Scrum master is not the one who says that I will deliver this product. It's the team who does that. It's a Scrum team who does that. So ideally, the Scrum master is the one who protects the team, who sees to it that they do not have any roadblocks in a way of developing the software. And certainly, he does not want anyone to disturb the team in the middle of the sprint. So that is the role of a Scrum master, to see whether they are following the framework, that is your Scrum framework, and they are certainly, he works with the product manager to see to it that the team is protected, the team is working in an optimal fashion, and the team is delivering the way the product manager requires. So that's really the role of a Scrum manager. He's not a project manager, as a common perception lies. So that's Scrum master. Now, the third element is Scrum team, a very important element of your Scrum framework. What is Scrum team? Scrum team is the nuts and bolts of who does the work within a sprint. So sprint, as you said, can be 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but the composition of the team is 1 tester, 1:3 developers. So you can have 2 or 3 developers. Then you can have 1 acceptance tester, that's a UAT. And then lastly, you will have person who is a requirements analyst. So requirement analyst is the one who looks in the future, who sees what are the different requirements that are lined up that's coming in the next sprints or future sprints. And then you have a tester, system tester who is working with the developer to develop the test scripts inside the cycle, inside the sprint cycle. And then you have a UAT who is working in hand with your requirement analyst to see to it that whatever requirements are coming up in future, they are being developed as in present. So they are the important link between the application that is developed and then the requirements that's come in the future. So that is Scrum team. It has to be cross-functional. So for example, a tester, ideally who was a developer who does not want to develop now can be a tester. That's a very ideal situation for a Scrum team because they can hand off in case of need of an hour. So that's the reason why they have to be multi-skilled and they have to be self-organizing in nature. So that's the Scrum team. It's a very important aspect of the roles are very important aspect of a Scrum framework. Why? Because it's a team who takes the ownership. It's a team who says that I'm going to complete the work. It's a team who says that, okay, this is what we have signed up for this 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and whether we will deliver or not is you stand all together or you fail altogether. So that's the concept that comes very much predominant within a Scrum environment. So that's why the nature of Scrum team is very important, where the members know each other, they are friendly with each other, and there is less amount of animosity among the team members. So that's an important factor that goes within a Scrum team. Any questions on Scrum roles?
Like here, like you use continuous integration tool.
Yeah, we'll come on to that later. When we come there, I will stop there and we can answer your question. Okay.
How do you choose this kind of team?
Good question. Good question. So the choice of the team is such that there will be iterations within a Scrum, right? So when suppose a team member is not compatible within the team member, you change him, you bring another person, right? So the handoffs within the team, for example, if a tester is ready with his test scripts, he can also help the developer to write the unit test scripts. But it's nothing like the tester says, no, my work is done, I'm done, you start doing your own thing. It's not like that. So if you see the composition of team, it is different for every other team. But the elements of the team will always remain the same. You still require a tester, you will still require a UAT, you will still require an analyst. But certainly it is not, I'll again repeat, it's not the SDLC team members who form part of your team. These team members are cross-skilled. They know each other's strength and weaknesses, right? And they are more compatible and they are more cohesive in nature. That's why customer collaboration and team collaboration is very important within a Scrum environment. You had some question? Okay. So, okay. I'm breaking my own rules in asking questions, but I wanted to have 15 minutes later on, but I guess as I'm going through, I see many people are having questions on their faces, so I said, okay, let's break that rule and then, keep it open so that people can ask questions and be let interactive. Go ahead. That will give me some time to breathe as well. Huh?
Is there any specific reason for the team members being full-time?
Yes. The team member should be full-time. So when you say the team has to be dedicated, that's one important aspect, that team member should be full-time. Why I would say, I had experience in my past projects, and that's not why it is over there. This is part of the Scrum framework that has been propagated by Ken Schwaber and by Jeff Sutherland. Okay, so but we digressed from that framework, and we had system testers being shared across 2 or 3 Scrum team members. So you say system testing, you write your test scripts, you're done. Come on, move on, help other Scrum team members. What happened was, when the time came for developer being ready, and when the testers needs to come back and do the testing, there used to be a conflict for resources, and that's the reason why we found a lot of time being wasted just on waiting for other team members to be ready, so that they can come and test. So having a dedicated member, if they're done with the system test scripts right now, they can help the developer to write the unit test scripts. They can see, and they are cross-trained, right? So they can also do some development work. They can say, okay, let me pick up this part of your work, finish it for you, so the development work happens quicker. So that's the idea of having a cross-trained team and with full-time dedication to the team. So.
In most cases, you have a resource working on that, and you'll say there will be one issue.
Uh-huh.
And in most cases, the team member is pulled out, a critical developer
Yeah.
is pulled out.
Production support. Most of the time, production support. Yes.
Then
Yeah.
you pulled out, and the sprint of 2 weeks
Yeah.
goes for a toss.
Yeah. So typically we.
You have to rebuild a new member. You have to bring in that member
Right.
again back to this, or a new member.
Right.
Then he has to get to this speed to this into this project, and
Right.
the sprint at least for 2 weeks.
Right.
You lost already 2 weeks.
So I see two questions in your question, right? One is a scenario where the team member he goes out for short duration and comes back, right? And the second scenario is the team member is gone forever because he's reassigned, right? So in case of reassign, yes, you have to follow the cycle, fine. But for the first one, again going to our golden triangle, right, where you have the resources and your time box fixed. but your requirements, they change. So in case of loss of a developer, you change the requirement. You reassign your work into saying that, okay, we don't have that much amount of time now to dedicate, we move it to another sprint. So another sprint means another release. So that way you're negotiating your time because your resources has reduced, right? In case of adding another person right away, I mean, that depends upon the team, but certainly you kind of renegotiate your time.
So the personal collaboration is kind of
More important, yeah. That's why a product owner has to be not part of the team, but has to be always in interaction with the team members, yeah. Any more? So this is a very important, Scrum roles is very important. So if you got any questions, let's talk about it right now.
What do you mean by in any case, act like one in any case?
At like one voice. So my experience, that's my addition. That's why I can stand by it. What I've seen is there are 3 or 4 product owners, and they are looking at 2 or 3 product applications, and one person is the owner for a team. So even if he's talking with or consulting with other team members who are the owners, like for example, you have a product manager, and he's talking with his director or vice president or a requirement analyst to understand what the application going to be, or the business analyst application going to be. So we don't expect a Scrum team member to talk with the directors and the business analysts to understand what the product going to be. He's going to be one person, one voice. He will everything has to pass through him. So at the end of the sprint, when you are delivering or demoing your application, that time he says, yes, this is what I was looking for, or this is not what I was looking for. So he's kind of a sign-off guy. Okay, so this is your Scrum roles. So what is sprint? Sprint is again a framework. I showed you the small box, one tied up on each other. It's basically a time-boxed iteration, a duration 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. Certainly not 6 weeks, certainly not 8 weeks. Then it's not a sprint. It's kind of a mini SDLC project that you're running. So anybody says it goes beyond 4 weeks, it's certainly not a Scrum. And you can quote anyone for that. There should not be any outside influence. Outside influence means, again, one of the examples of production support being dragged into. Once or twice is fine, but certainly the sprint does not expect that there will be a raid of looking for the resources to come from the sprint team. And each sprint kind of starts with your daily Scrum. So daily team members meet. We will go into details about that in the next coming slides. So this is a sprint. Sprint, again, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, depending upon the product you're building. It has a fixed duration every time. You decide upon it way in upfront, and yes, and there is no outside influence. Any questions? We'll talk about this in detail in the coming slides. Yeah. So what is a sprint? So as we saw no influence from outside. This kind of gives you an overview graphically about what is a sprint, right? So it starts with a sprint kickoff. Typically, every sprint will start with a sprint kickoff. What is a kickoff? In which this is the place or time or the duration where the team members all come together in a room, sitting with the product owner, a Scrum Master, and then they sign up for the work. They will say, okay, we are going to do 3, 4, 5, 6 requirements depending upon the duration of the team and depending upon the amount of tasks that can be used to do the work. So if you see, I have seen story 1, story 2, story 3, 4, 5, 6. I will tell you what is a user story later on. So just keep in mind, story is nothing but one small unit of work that is shippable. Shippable means that can be demoed. So for example, if you're doing a screen, in a screen you're doing a login screen. So login screen is one story, one shippable story, right? So you can say that, okay, we can give a login screen, and then second story we can give an account profile with a basic structure, say maybe account last name, first name, and address. That's it. So that's your story 2. So the team goes and signs up for this work for a X amount of time, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, and that is the duration of sprint. Do we do documentation? Very important question. Yes, we do documentation. Are we going to short circuit ourselves and say, no, we don't? Scrum says no documentation. That's wrong. Scrum never says no documentation. The Scrum will say that do documentation as a last, as an activity. Don't put documentation in front and do everything together first, because you don't know the product is going to change. So doing the documentation and then revisiting the documentation to make a change again is going to be a problem, right? So you're doing the rework again. You're going to waste time. You're going to waste resource. So typically you would do documentation at the end of the sprint or a sprint later on. So documentation always tags behind rather than being in the front and then showing all your flowery stuff, which is not really, which is not is required. The product as a demo is required, right? So at the end, review. What is a sprint review? Okay, before that I missed one point, testing. So you always continuously test, very important aspect. So when a user story 1, so for example, login page is created, I send it to the tester. Okay, this is your environment. I have migrated the repository. Go and test the login page. Is it working, not working? Whatever the parameters we have decided on, the acceptance criteria, we'll choose whether it is working or not. The test scripts will pass or fail. It fails, it goes back again to a development team to perform again its development work. So that we'll do continuously. Sprint review. What is sprint review? So it happens at the end of the sprint. It's 2-hour block for 2 weeks. Sorry, 4-hour block for 2 weeks. So if incrementally, if it is 3 weeks, it's 6 hours. If it's 4 weeks, then it's typically a full day. So you demo your work of whatever you did in the entire sprint to your stakeholders. Now, who are your stakeholders? Not just the product owner, but his entire product owner team, right? You show them, make them understand that this is what you asked for in the beginning of the sprint, at the sprint kickoff, and then this is what we develop. This is what you look for, and this is your, we want your feedback. So this scenario in which you are getting the feedback of the product owner within 2 weeks. So if product owner says, oh, I envision this, but this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something else. You're not waiting for the entire project 26 weeks down the line to say, no, this is not the stakeholders required. Within 2 weeks, you can make out a decision, okay, now I need to change. I need to throw away all the code and rewrite all over again, which is okay. Because again, you're responding to the change for the small incremental steps. You're not responding to the change after the entire project is delivered, right? So which helps to save money for your client, and also it helps to save your face of not capturing the requirements and then delivering it, right? So it helps both ways, yes.
Question on documentation. You said documentation at the end, right? Say what happens like if some stakeholder wants to know what is coming out of after this sprint or after this product is delivered. If you deliver the document at the end, it's already done, right? So if they need something, changes or something to be added to that.
Yeah.
How do you handle that in this?
So documentation is only for future reference purpose. It's not for your present. So when you're doing the sprint review, it is 2 weeks down the line. You're showing the product actually. You may not have documented. You're documented or may not have documented. Showing the sprint, and then you're getting the feedback. If you get thumbs up, then whatever you're documented is perfect, no problem. But if it's not done, then you're going to rework that part and you're going to change the documentation again. Yeah.
Basically, you redo the sprint again.
Redo the sprint again, exactly. So the story is not done. So sprint is complete, but the story is not completed till you really deliver as per what the requirement the product manager requires. Okay. So the definition of story in the next slides it will come. What is a story? Yeah.
How much is the like from kickoff till deployment and acceptance?
Duration?
Duration is
So 2 weeks, again I'll repeat, 2 weeks is for application driven. For example, like SAP or Oracle applications, 2 weeks to 3 weeks is most you can have for delivering. If you have typical Java or .NET, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Because you do require, yeah, small NM, yeah. So you do require that one 3 weeks. Yeah, it's not a big project, yeah. And certainly it's not a small SDLC projects within 3 weeks. It's not like that.
But like for the sake of capturing the stories or the requirements that what you're going to do. That is being recorded.
Yeah, that is being recorded. That we will come in future slides. What is a story wall?
No, but
So-
as Manoj was asking, I'm just.
Yes, in the documentation side, right? Yeah.
If a user or one resource is being pulled out and
Huh.
he wants to know, okay,
What changed?
exactly-
He
what
can
I'm
refer to
going
the document.
deliver,
Exactly.
it has to be
It's in document. Yeah.
So this documentation that you're talking about
Yeah.
is the product document.
It's a product
not the
documentation,
requirement.
not the requirements document. It's the product document that is in continuous motion. It's not like, okay, this is final. No, it's not. It's the change that you adapt. It's the change that you're going to make it happen all the time. So, yes, you're going to update it no matter what. It's not that you're going to leave it behind.
Also, that the reason you have a daily meeting is if there is any changes to the requirements, the
Yeah.
product owner can identify them on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, yes.
On the
And
agenda.
give immediate feedback, yes. Give immediate
So
feedback.
ideally, you should reach the end of a sprint and he looks at it and says, this is not what I asked.
This is not I asked for,
Because
yeah.
every day it should be getting revised and you
Yes.
should be building something that is requested.
Request, yeah. So smaller task, yeah. We'll go, I think it will come in the next slides as we, what you said is very important, yes. So, okay. So going back to our planning. So what I mentioned right now, planning, so even if you, before you go into the sprint, you need to understand what you're going to deliver. What is your plan? What is the product requiring, right? So planning is a very important aspect of before you enter into a sprint. Okay, even if before you ever discuss what is the requirement you require for a development team to develop or a product needs to be developed. So planning has got, who does the planning, by the way? It's a group of product owners who knows the business very well. The business owners, they will do the planning. Scrum Master will be important member who will facilitate the planning. And it can be really two parts, you know. You can, so there are two levels of planning that happens. One is at the product level, where a product backlog is created. We'll go more into detail in a subsequent slide. And then you create a sprint backlog. That is the work that is to be performed within a sprint. Again, that sprint work has to be signed off, or you can say accepted by team members to do that work. So that's the next slide that's coming up. So we went to the planning. What is the output of the planning meetings? This is the output of the planning meeting. This is called a story wall. Story wall, I'll just give 5 seconds. Just look at the story wall. It's very self-explanatory, not out of the world, simple in nature. So if you write a book, right? How do you start a book? You think about a very high level theme, or you can think about a high level vision you have, and that vision you slowly break down into smaller and smaller, decompose it rather to smaller and smaller ideas, you know, and then you write the stories. So if you see at the top level, you know a key business requirement by a user, by a business, breaks down into what are the features within an application. So I want an account profile, that's a feature. I want a person to have a single sign-on, that's again a feature. Okay, I want to have to calculate a price for a product, that's again a feature. I want to store a product list, and that's a feature. I want to have a catalog of products, that's again a feature, right? So all these are features within which you kind of develop your theme, and then you develop a smaller level epics. Epics, again, if you see within our storyline, they tell you that a big bunch of again the product catalog is your epic. So then you keep decomposing that into a smaller level story. So for example, within the account profile, what you require? I require the one screen of last name, first name, and address, the PII data. In the second screen, whether your password changes, all those important elements, so on and so forth. You decompose that into a last level task where how I'm going to code one piece of line, say how I'm going to have a text box that says this is last name. So I need a label with a last name and a text box with a last name. That's your task. So that is what or I want a web page that's an empty container. That's again a task. So that way you define to the smallest level. That is your story wall. Okay, any questions? Yeah, so user story is a generic term, right? It's a generic term, but how you define a user story, I will go in the next slide. But what it tells you is user story can be decomposed into a small user story. Again, it can be either way. It can be depending upon what your upper level story is. So even the parent is again a user story. The child is also a user story. Till you go to a point where you cannot go beyond anything, and that level is called a task. So that is a task where individually I create one field for a last name. You create a field for a first name. That's like you cannot go beyond that. Yes.
So in this entire picture, when we talk about the team and breaking down to different stories,
Yeah.
end of the day, we pick up a particular user story for a sprint work.
Yes.
In that particular story, coming back to Samir's point, when we have these meetings, everyday meetings, when the users do get the sign up from the stakeholder,
Yeah.
do they get involved into their everyday Scrum meetings? And if they do involve, then are we breaking this further into the sprint, like as if we have 2 to 4 weeks shorter
Yeah,
duration?
yeah.
In that itself, are
Yeah.
we again revisiting that stories
Yes.
with the stakeholders?
Yes, but the team is not doing that. It's the product owner who does that. So product owner who is really looking at the higher picture, he's standing out of the team, product owner. He's looking at, okay, my team is developing this user story. And in future sprints, I have to get this thing developed over a period of time, right? So he knows, okay, if something changed at the future user stories, he would know that change has to be reflected within the story which my team is working on. So he immediately tells the team member who are in a daily scrum, right, that listen, we signed up for this particular user story to be this way, but the change that has come up in future demands that we need to change the existing user story. So that change, the team will not say that, no, we don't want to do this. We'll do the initial way. No, because the basic fundamental element of Scrum is adapt change. You accept change and say, okay, I'm going to change it. So at that moment of time, we say, okay, now the LOE for the new change is going to be beyond a sprint. Or no, don't worry, we can manage this within a sprint. That decision is made within that daily stand-up, okay? And that's how you kind of do a handoff with the product owner even before you reach to the sprint review. Fair enough? Fair enough? That answers your question as well, right? Right, Samir, right?
Yeah, I mean, it should be an everyday thing, right?
Yes, exactly.
Expecting
Yeah.
the product owner
Yeah.
to exactly know what is the
Yeah.
When he looks at the output on a daily basis,
Yeah.
it changes.
Yeah, because see, the sprint team members will not know the future, right? Because the product owner knows what are these future stories that I'm building it for the sprint team or the Scrum team to work on.
And also I'm going to, like, maybe I'm reading into your, what you're going to present eventually is that, let's say you define a user story, start working on it, and then during the course of the implementation, they realize that this needs to be broken down further. Maybe at that point, do you increase the sprint or do you just move it to the next phase?
Yeah, it's a time box. You never move your sprint time duration. If you find that this work is going to be going beyond our sprint, you either try to see something else is there on the backlog and work on that to fit into that time box sprint, or you cancel the sprint altogether and start all over again. In which work you will decompose that user story into smaller user stories and then plan it across into the 2 or 3 sprints, and then you start over. So who calls the cancellation of the sprint is the product owner. Product owner is the owner who will say we can cancel the sprint. So cancellation of the sprint is a normal activity. It need not to be seen that you cancel the sprint, the world is going to break apart. No, it's not. The product owner makes a call that, listen, what we thought about was less work, but is coming up to be a much larger animal to tackle. You know what, let's stop here. Let the team go and work for 2 days to identify how we can break down this story into smaller stories, right? And then let's plan out our screen. So 1 week, nothing will happen. We will just donate our time for the planning of that animal or tackling of that animal. And now let's plan out from the next week. So the sprint will just start from the next week, so on and so forth. 1 second. Yes. How? Yes. So that's how we have to stop the sprint there. in case if that animal is too big. If not, then yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Don't you think the initial documentation becomes very important here in this kind of scenario to avoid conflicts between whether it was misinterpretation of requirements
Yeah.
or it was a change that the
Yeah.
client has
Very good question. So the documentation within the Scrum framework is a different kind, right? So here we are talking about user story as your documentation. User story is your really the direction in which what is the requirements. The building of a user story, I will tell you what it is in the next slide, where it will tell you the elements of the user story and what are the criteria or acceptance criteria. That forms your fundamental documents of your sprint. Okay, so just wait for a sec. Yeah.
Are there scenarios where you have seen that the product owner is changed? So what impact this brings to the whole
So I don't know. I have not faced that in my project right so far. 3 projects which I've done, but I have seen in my parallel teams where they have changed because there is a iteration. People leave their work. They go away, right? I mean, they find some greener pastures. In scenario, what happens is actually, if you go back in Fannie Mae, in the last project which I worked for, there is a team of product owners. So there are like analysts within the team under a director and there are 3 or 4 project managers. So even if one drops off, which one did actually, the analyst who was working underneath, she knew exactly what was the requirement, what was the product about. Till they found another product manager who came up to the speed. The other 2 managers stepped into that role. But certainly the decision-making power then went to that junior level analyst who became a product owner for the team for some amount of time. So that was the way it was handled out there. But certainly, I mean.
Why I ask this question is just based on the question that okay, if our requirements that okay, what is my future product going to be?
Yeah,
if I have not documented it and it is in the brain of that product
owner,
that is going to break up all those sprints or tasks.
Certainly.
And if that person goes away, then that means this product is a toss.
True, very true. That's why certainly to mitigate this risk, big companies they always have a team of product owners who's working in a product. So and certainly you cannot expect that one only in a small startup scenario where you have a startup and then you have one guy who has a vision and then he leaves. That means the entire startup breaks down, right? But in a big companies, the enterprise, I find it very difficult to digest that this scenario will ever occur in a very frequent manner. It can happen in no matter what. Yeah, go ahead. Uh-huh. No. Because the team, dedication to the team membership is very important, right? Then go ahead.
I mean, so far what I have felt is this is all asking for ideal situation.
Yeah.
All goods. I want good team.
Huh.
I'm okay with requirements changing, but I want a good team. I want a dedicated team.
Right.
We need the team to be cross-functional.
Right.
Everyone should be able to work.
Right.
So
True.
this is all ideal, but
Yeah.
this is practical.
This is practical in a way that if you see the team members, if you have a shorter duration, it's practical. So if you say that you are going to have a 3 months sprint, tell me, is it practical? No, it's not practical. But if you say smaller sprint, okay, within that small sprint, a resource manager can dedicate a system tester saying, okay, he's there for you guys, right? He's a man Friday for you. But you cannot say for the entire project, then you have to rework your entire resource plan into action, and then you have one dedicated person, his billing rate, or if he's a contractor, and so on and so forth, right? So.
But I also think this is more meaningful for the Scrum team members, right?
Yeah.
For the product owners and the Scrum master, they can be managing it.
Yeah, they can be. Yeah, certainly. So ideally, Scrum Master, there are 2 or 3 teams they manage. So Scrum Master, we'll go to that later on when we reach there. But Scrum Masters can always manage 2 or 3 because they are not actually doing the work. They are overlooking whether the framework is being implemented or not.
So in that sense, you could dedicate a person for 2 weeks, like you said, and then move him to another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So even if there are multiple teams requiring the same
exactly.
But then
Yeah.
different sprints you could organize it
Yeah.
such that they all become.
Yeah.
they all
So
become-
it's not ideal for a Scrum team member to take it into the SDLC and then put him back again into Scrum and so on and so forth. That's not ideal. Okay. But to answer to your question, yes, you can have in and out as long as they are within the same Scrum environment and same Agile environment. Okay. So this is the output of your sprint planning. This is very important, and this helps you in doing the release planning of your entire project, because you have all the themes lined up, you have all the epics lined up, you have the storyboard. You know how much work is going to be done in next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. That's the release cycle you would typically take, and you say a release cycle would go for 60 days. So if you have 2 week sprint, then you can typically see that you have 4 sprints till you release the product into a production or into a mini product sub production, which is not gone into a live state right now. 1 second, you had a question, right? Yeah.
On the sprints itself, like you said, this process is continuous adoption of change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you do multiple sprints,
Mm.
and you guys at the end of the project analyze like how many sprints you could have avoided,
Mm-hmm.
or you could have combined. Did you guys do that kind of analysis?
So that's a retrospective. So that is the retrospective. That's another fundamental which will come in the next slides. That's called sprint retrospective. We did sprint review, but sprint retrospective is very important when it's done between 2 sprints. So after this, so we are in the beginning of the sprint where we are doing the sprint planning. Then we'll go into the daily stand-ups. Then we'll go to the sprint stand-up, and then we'll do the review, and then the demo, and then the retrospective. So that's how the sequence will go. So let me go step back. So if you see all the user stories over there, they form into a product backlog, right? So this is the product backlog. What is a product backlog? Is basically a prioritized user stories stacked one after the other. So if you see a Kanban, right? If a Kanban where you have the list of things to be done, they are one after the other. So typically you have the list that is in priority order, and the sprint team can go and pick up the user story they want to sign up to do that in a particular sprint. So this is just a list of stories, nothing else, in a priority order, and that's a product backlog. Any questions?
So it is up to the sprint team that whichever they want to pick.
Yeah, but
I think the
yeah.
number 4 is more
Yeah.
easy to tackle right now.
Yeah.
They will pick that.
the low-hanging tree, yes, they can pick that up. Yeah, absolutely correct. And product backlog is the parent of a sprint backlog. I think is the next slide. So that's the composition of product backlog. It's a simple write-up. You can read it for your.
So this can be discussed prior to sprint initiation, right?
Yes, it is discussed, or rather it is developed by the group of product owners which I mentioned before. So group of product owners, they have the vision of what is the product. They decompose that requirements, the vision, into a smaller user stories that can be built over a period of time. Like I explained about account profile, about the product catalog, about your login page. All these are big themes, right? Within the themes, you make it more smaller into what are the fields, what are the nuts and bolts, what is your data requirements, all those things into a smaller user story. So you keep decomposing to a small level where it can be done within a shorter duration of time, which can be tested by within a short duration, and that short duration is the sprint. So this is the product backlog is at the higher level, and then it decomposes down into a sprint. Yeah.
Where is the architect mode?
So we'll go there. So we talk about sprint backlog. What is sprint backlog? Sprint backlog is a bunch of user stories that has executed within a sprint. Again, within a sprint. So in 2 weeks, you have 6 user stories. We do the work of those user stories within that sprint. What are the components of the sprint backlog? You have a bunch of user stories. You have user stories who have definition of done, or an acceptance criteria. We'll go into that in detail in next slide. It is committed by Scrum team members. So Scrum team members really sign up for it. So product owners will push, say, no, you do 10 stories in a sprint. And Scrum team member says, no, we are going to just do 6. So that has to be respected by the product owner. That's very important. So it is committed by the Scrum team members, which it doesn't happen many times. But yes, should be updated every day. As to Samir's point, product owners has to give feedback, continuous feedback on a daily stand-up. It has to be updated every day. And the task requires not more than 16 hours. So for example, I'm writing an account profile. I want to create a web page container. Typically, a web page container will require just, I think, 10-15 minutes to create a container, right? But if you line up all those tasks together, it shouldn't be more than 16 hours, or else it's really not helping a user story to be completed within a short duration of time. So, so you have a question? Yeah.
Who make the decision to come up with the technology? Like, I mean, we have multiple technologies, like for front end or back end.
Yeah.
So
That
many
ties up with your
frameworks.
that ties up with your architecture question. So that let's come to that other point later on. Okay. So far, any question? Yeah, go ahead. Huh? The testing time. So testing time. So testing is unit testing. The developer writes his own unit test scripts, and then it goes into the code coverage. And the unit tester, when the development is happening, is creating the test scripts, and that gets tested. So a page container and few fields, it shouldn't take more, right? So typically 16 hours is the baseline for a user story. If it goes beyond that, that means more work needs to be done. Cut it into 2 user stories, decompose it, and then make it smaller, so that what you sign up for falls within the sprint, and you get a good sense of doing the work, or rather completing the work within the sprint.
How do you utilize this, following this condition in an ERP sector, like where you are implementing 4
Yeah.
modules integrated with each other?
Yes.
How do you restrict it to 16 hours?
So 16 hours. So in ERP model, I'll take Siebel CRM example, right? Within that, suppose you want to create say a view for a say accounts view, not account profile, then accounts view in a CRM. You have existing view. You just copy it, and then you start adding your fields in the way you want, right? So that is one component of your work. But what are the functionality for that account view to perform? That can be another user story, right? So you break down your work into smaller components. So within that functionality, you say you want to write a workflow. So first you write whatever that can be scripted behind that view. That's one user story, set of user story. Then what workflow is required for a particular field to perform test validation, you can write as a third user story. And then what assignment of that account to a certain group of people or an individual, that can be a fourth user story. That way you break down your work into smaller components.
So when you're implementing one business process,
Yeah, so you just do one first. Yeah, prioritize the user story, do one first, and then, yeah.
for each user story, the sprint team may change, because
Hmm.
initially there may be some configuration, and there may be some development, and
Yeah.
there may be some testing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
for each,
So the team works together. Right? So the developer and your tester, they work in tandem. They are working together to complete that task, that user story. So it's not that one person is doing the user story. It's a team who is doing the user story. It's a teamwork. It's not. So it's the change in the mindset, right? It's not like a person saying that, okay, I will do everything for an entire account view. No, it needs to be tested. It needs to be taken to the level where it has to be integrated with the other views as well. So the other developer also come in the picture where you do the integration testing. Okay.
The user stories, what is the goal of the sprint? Like tasks
Yeah.
are broken down,
Yes, broken down parts of the user story.
you
Yes.
execute tasks, and
Yeah.
then eventually you execute a story.
Yes.
And
Correct.
the task cannot be more than 16 hours.
Yes. See, this is where the breakage is, right? So task is at the bottom. Task worked within a sprint. Yes,
The user
yes.
story also belongs to a sprint.
Sprint, yes. So from here below, everything belongs to the sprint. Yes. One line definition. Yes, absolutely, yes, correct. So typically, if you want to have an account screen, you will say, I want to create one list applet and one form applet. So one task is the list applet is one task, form applet is another task. Third task would be, I want 10 fields on a list applet, 10 fields on a form applet. So there will be another 2 tasks. So typically, if you see that a tester, when a list applet is created, the tester will go and test the list applet for whether you can sort it, you can make a search or do whatever you want with that list applet, and so on and so forth. So that's why that 16 hours, it works for a Java condition as well as, it's really an average. It works for a ERP-based application as well. So I jumped 3 slides backwards. Okay, so what is a user story? What's the construct of a user story, right? So user story really typically is like a story. You tell a story, you have a role to play, you require what needs to be done, and then it tells you what is the outcome, so that, So if you see this Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland, they came up with a construct of what an ideal user story would look like or feel like, or how you can narrate it as a story. It says, as a sales associate, I would like to search for customers so that I can call them. So that is the real value of the requirement. A functionality that can be done by a sales associate to make a call. So what he needs to do, he needs to provide a search function. So that's the requirement, creating a search function on a view, so that on a view called customer, so that the sales associate can pick up the phone and call them. So that's the construct of the user story. Any questions? Okay, but it doesn't end here, right? It doesn't end here by saying that, okay, this is the user story, now go ahead and create it. No, it doesn't stop there. You have to have a definition of done. Definition of done or acceptance criteria, both synonym of each other. They can be defined, but the ultimate goal of that acceptance criteria and definition of done is the same. It tells you what is the test criteria. Again, I'll tell you, it tells you what is the test criteria for testing that particular requirement. So if you see positive test, negative test, goal plating. Goal plating, everybody knows. Add something extra. Okay. So even if there is a goal, there's a good goal, there's a bad goal, and then there's a stretch goal. So the stretch goal is really, if you can do this, this is a wow effect for a product owner. If you can do this, I'm happy with it. Positive, negative test. So that's what is definition of done. If a developer hits that 4 goals or 3 goals, that story is done. Done means he can move it to the bucket where it says story is done, and then it can be showed it to the product owner in a sprint review as a demo, and that product owner would give a thumbs up or thumbs down depending upon what he requires, right? And if he says down, then again he has to tell what will make that thumbs up, and then do the same story in the next sprint again with that particular change. So what in the documentation wise, where the things will change, the story will remain the same, but in acceptance criteria, the definition of done, there'll be some more line items or task items that will be written. We'll say, okay, these are the new changes that are required. Only then this story is done, or else it's not done. Right? So, any questions?
So the documentation happens before.
So your question was documentation. It happens over here in the story where you have the story construct, and then you have the definition of done as a part of the story, but not within the story, but as a part of the story. And it tells you what are the test criteria that will tell that this particular user story is done. Yeah.
How is the story size determined?
Story size is the LOE, right? The LOE of the, so that is estimated by your team member. That we will come to the next where we do a planning poker at that time. Any questions on this user story? It's really a building block, the smallest block. I have to answer your architecture questions, guys. Okay. So here's where typical user story. This is a schematic diagram of a user story within a sprint. Okay. So I've just taken one story and then broken down into who are the players. So it comes out from the product backlog. It goes into a sprint planning. The sprint planning, all the members, they look into the story and try to understand what is the definition of done, and understand what is the user story. And then the design and development will design it and develop it. The tester tests it, it goes into the automated testing, that is the continuous integration testing for the Java application or the .NET application, and then it goes into the demonstration, and then finally when it says that it is a thumbs up all the way through by the product owner, it goes into the deployment. Down below you have continuous documentation and code factoring happening all the time, and then when it is deployed into a certain environment, it can be a demo environment, that's where the sprint review and the retrospective happens. So this is a schematic graph of how a user story treatment occurs within a sprint. So, and who are the players within the sprint? So you can see design and the development team is one player, system unit tester and the UAT acceptance tester is another player. Then you have an automated testing team who are the third player, who may not be engrossed at the time of creating or building a user story, but they typically pick up the test scripts and then they automate it so that the continuous integration is performed within the scenario. And then, of course, the deployment team who may not be a part of the Scrum team, but they really act upon the user story in way of deployment. Okay? Any questions?
So the requirements, discussing with the developers and whoever managing, that will happen before starting the sprint or during the sprint?
The requirements, right? That is the sprint planning, right? So sprint planning will happen over here. So you see product backlog, the grooming, product grooming is really the actual activity of decomposing the user story into a smaller user story. That takes you down to the task level. So that activity is called a product grooming. It's like you comb your hairs, right? So it's like that. So you fine grain it smaller and smaller level to a place where it can go into a sprint planning, or you can go to a story, or into a. It's all done before. Yes. The story wall is created even before it is gone. It goes to the development team members. Yeah. So the creation of story wall as a sprint planning activity is very important, and it has to be complete, or else you will not be able to do a release planning, or you will not be able to achieve that sprint velocity over a period of time. Yes.
Is deployment must or users?
Yeah, so deployment can occur in the test environment. It can occur in a final production or acceptance environment. It depends upon your technology architecture, how you want to do it. Many times the testing is done within the development environment or the build environment itself within the sprint. But when it is ready to be deployed, then you move it into a SIT or a system test environment, and then a proper system test and automated test is done within that environment. So it is basically an architectural question where every team will have its own preference. Not every team, rather, I'll say every enterprise will have its own preference. They have their own internal cloud within which they just have to create a VMs. They will create multiple VMs for that project, and they will figure it out. Or they will just have one repository and everything gets checked in and build occurs in that. It's a preference of an enterprise.
But as we said, user stories are smaller process or smaller requirements to be implemented. So they may or may not have their own existence as a part of the whole big picture, right?
But that's the work of product owner to make that part of that big picture. The big picture really is owned by the product owner, or in the enterprise, the group of product owners, right? So they have the vision that, okay, I want to create a pricing utility. What are the features of the pricing utility? They know. And within that sprint, what are the stories that are being worked out for a pricing utility? They know that. So in a big picture, if you see, the product owner really sees the release over a period of time. In SDLC, if you compare, the whole team knows what's going on. So there's a lot of slack built into it. There's a lot of wastage of time. There's a lot of rework done because you understand after 3 months, oh, I needed to change this particular form. And then the development team kind of, okay, we'll wait. So again, you lose money on time and material. All those wastages are there. And you do the rework. That's another wastage. So it's really depend upon enterprise on the way you want to build the infrastructure.
It may not be something that you can look and feel. It could be something, but it has to be testable.
It has to be testable.
So it has to be deployed somewhere.
Deployed somewhere, yeah.
Not necessarily the production.
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily in production environment. No, that's not the criteria. Yes, Rina. Okay. So when it goes into the sprint, is the sprint team members who manages the user story. when it is within the sprint. Outside the sprint, it is the product owner along with the Scrum Master who kinds of do the the user story grooming. So, for example, if you see, that's where now I will answer the technical architect's question. Okay, what's the role of a technical architect? So you have a product owner who is who is from the business side. You have a Scrum Master who is seeing to it that the Scrum framework is being adhered to, and we are not moving away from our Scrum methods and the framework. And then he knows the capacity of the team members. So Scrum Master is not just a dumb guy who is just looking at the Scrum framework, but also he knows that, okay, this team is going through a certain velocity. They are doing some work within certain amount of time, and we have to adhere to that such a way that the Scrum team doesn't feel pressured to do the work in a way that it cannot be done by them. So that's where the value of the Scrum Master comes in. And then the technical architect really provides the infrastructure input from that point of view. They will provide the technical excellence on what platform to be used. For example, if you want to do a Java POJOs, right? So POJOs really helps you to test your create a test scenario, or you can say test your code, or the technical architect can say whether you want to use an XSDs or you want to use an XML. So those technical decisions are really done by a technology architect. He is not part of the Scrum team. He is part of the technology group. Now, this is an evolving factor where you can say there are groups of product owner. Certainly, there are groups of technical architects who sit outside the Scrum team members. They don't have to deal with day-to-day daily stand-ups. They have to see to it that the environment in which the Scrum is developing, it is active, it is alive, and it can deliver. So that's their real goal. So if you see from the environment, continuous integration environment point of view, do you think a developer has to go and build out a build? He will check in the code in the SVN, right? And then he will start developing some another piece of code. He does not have to be worried about, okay, whether the nightly run will happen and then the automated testing will happen. So that particular continuous integration is taken care by a technology architect who sits outside the team. Okay, they are the development support for a Scrum team. So does that answer?
Set up the whole continuous integration,
Yeah. So development team doesn't do that. It's basically the architecture team or an infrastructure team who does that, right?
So they basically work hand in hand with the product owners.
Product owners, yeah.
And then give them guidance. Okay,
Yeah.
this kind of product could be delivered with
Yeah.
this kind of architecture.
Yes,
this
correct.
Kind of products or this kind of
Correct.
applications. Or whatever.
So product owner may not know what is continuous
Exactly.
integration.
Yeah.
Product owner may have no idea of what is continuous integration. But a technology architect within the enterprise will know they want to have a continuous testing done for every build that is checked in by a developer, so that it sees to it that it does not break other pieces of code. Whether there is a proper code coverage, whether the unit tests are done for a particular code coverage. All these parameters that needs to be a developer is just a developer who is creating the code, but really a technology architect is the one who creates the environment for the developer to excel.
Even the coding standards.
Even the coding standard is done by the technology architects, yes. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Suppose for product owner, sometimes this happens that they don't know exactly what system they want to build. They need a prototype or something.
Yes.
In that case, is it useful?
Yeah. So if I go way back, right? In that I had laid out that there is the initiation phase, then you have a plan and design, and then you have your actual build and then test. In plan and design, typically what happens, the composition of team is your product owner, then your technology architects who really define the environment, and then you have a couple of developers sitting through in a chat session, as they're developing and they're creating a prototype. No system testing is required. You don't require a UAT. Just require requirements sitting across and say, okay, let's build a container, let's build a small step, let's build a prototype. Some prototype can be on Excel sheet, it can be on an actual application, but it's on local machine. It need not have to be part of your full-blown server exercise. So POCs, exactly, POCs. So yes, even in that, you kind of identify, within these 2 weeks, I want to perform to get to this point where I will be able to see that this prototype is working or not. If it's not working, throw this off. I will move on into the another sprint and start another test to see whether this prototype will work or not. So that's your initiation and the planning phase to start with. Yeah. Continuous? Huh?
20 developers.
Huh.
If you have like 20 developers.
Break it into two. I would say break it into four. Four is ideal. Because in a Scrum team, have 4 or 5 maximum developers. For 5 to support 5, have 2 system testers, 1 UAT and 2 requirements analysts. And requirement analyst should be like UAT and requirement analyst both. They cannot be like, no, I will just follow the documentation. No, they have to have the skills of a UAT as well. So that would be ideal. 10 to 12 would be ideal number of team members within a Scrum team. Okay. Any more technology questions? Okay. So, let me take one step backward. So we did this, we found a user story, but now again we came to the point where 16 hours, we have to understand what is the estimation. We have short time. Let's run down to what is the estimation of user story. User story, you need to estimate. You need to understand what time that has to be done to really perform within a sprint, right? So 16 hours is 16 hours for a task. But what are the methods of understanding how to estimate it? So there are a couple of methods. One novel method that has come up within the Scrum tradition is called planning poker. Nothing to do with Las Vegas, but everything to do with the team members coming together and then playing a mind game of trying to understanding to a point where, okay, this much amount of work can be done for a user story. So let me go to the next screen. What are the so how do you identify, how do you estimate a story? Typically, you say that it will take n x number of hours, or you would say that it takes x number of value. So you narrate that user story broken into small part, and then you relatively match the strength of, or you can say the duration of the user story. So for example, I'll go back again to our famous login page and the account profile page. So login page will require for me to do that within 2 days. The account profile, how much time it will take for me to do account profile in relative to the login page. So the theory of relativity, you can say that can be brought into the picture where you relate a work with the smallest work that was done before or that you are thinking right now. So you relatively find out that which is the small one, okay, then which is the bigger one than that, which is another bigger one than that. That way you relate a story into a buckets, and that bucket is called a t-shirt size. T-shirt size can be like small, medium, large, extra large, and so on and so forth. And those buckets that are created, so whatever stories you build in, you put that into that bucket, and then you start decomposing into such a way that those stories are the smallest for, and they're even all across the board. So the smallest, so for that, you need to have numbers, like everybody's tuned for numbers. So either you can go for the 2 methods. You can go via how many hours that is required for a user story to be done, or another method is the Fibonacci method. Fibonacci method is well accepted by almost all the Scrum teams. It is very simple because it is very relative in nature. So what is Fibonacci? Actually, this was way back invented in our ancient India. Fibonacci numbers, they correspond to, if you see 0 and half, then you half plus 1 is 2, then 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on. So if you see this numbers, they keep increasing, not exponentially but semi-exponentially over a time, where you can relate a previous card with the amount of number that has to be added by itself, right? So that's how you see 3 is 1 plus 2 is 3. So you know, and the 2 is the 1 plus half, and it's rounded up to the next highest number, that is 2. So that's how you build up your t-shirt sizes. And Fibonacci series gives you the specific numbers where you can denote amount of work for that particular piece of work. Here I'll stop talking, and I know there are questions. Please go ahead and ask questions. Okay, everybody know what is Fibonacci series? Huh? Okay, and so everybody knows what is t-shirt size, like small, medium, large, right? And then the work, you put it in different buckets of small, medium, large. And the story, when you are doing a sprint planning, you really break down the larger buckets in such a way that you make it smaller and smaller and smaller to a smallest denomination, where you can say now this number of user story is ready to be done in a sprint. Okay, that's where the estimation comes from. Okay. Okay. So user story size, the function is, you can see, it's level of effort, level of simplicity, again the amount of risk that is required, and if it needs the integration between other applications or not. So what is planning poker? Again, imagine that there are Scrum team members, like 5 or 6 members who are sitting together, and each looks at the user story in different angles. So developer will look in one angle, the tester will look in another angle, the system tester and the UAT will look in different angles. They would come up with a number, how much difficult this story is what is your Fibonacci number, and they will close it to their heart. They will not show it first, and after everybody's chosen it, then they will show their number. The difference between the smallest and the largest, the negotiation will start among the team members to come to a middle point and saying that, okay, this is your accepted size of a story. And if it is large enough, then it needs to be decomposed. If it is small enough, then that falls into a smaller bucket. So the negotiations about a size of a user story really happens within a Scrum team. And hence, the transparency within a Scrum team, the honesty within a Scrum team is very important. The trust among the Scrum team members is important. The understanding between the Scrum team members that, okay, you know what, the tester is saying that it is really a huge story, that means he's got some information. The developer will say, let me understand what is the information. Because developer will be thinking, oh, this is just like 5 minutes job. Why this tester is making a whole lot of scenario that he has to test it in a big way. No, it does not require to be. Then developer will share his thoughts, his vision, and so with the system tester, and they will try to come to a middle point and see whether this really story requires so much of detailed work or it doesn't require detailed work. So that process of negotiation is really your planning poker. Yeah, the poker part of it is that you're telling what information you have rather than hiding from the person, and then you're trying to negotiate to a point where, okay, you can say yes, we can go ahead with it or not go ahead with it. So the next picture is really your process. I just spoke about it. Spend a few seconds. You can just read it. Okay. Okay. So now let's go quickly to your ceremonies. There are daily Scrum meetings, there's sprint review, and then the sprint retrospective. Right? They fall into the cycle which are placed in down there. What is a daily stand-up? Daily stand-up is no more than 15 minutes because you don't want to waste anybody's time. It's led by a Scrum Master, participated by the Scrum team members and the product owner. It asks 3 questions. What you did yesterday, what is your plan today, and do you face any roadblocks or impediment? Those are the 3 questions every Scrum team member talks about. If a Scrum team member says that, no, I don't have any work, okay, then the third person, the product owner or a Scrum Master would say, okay, there is some work, take this work and start working on this X or Y user story. If a person says, okay, if the person says, and I have a roadblock, I cannot do a coding, then Scrum Master and product owner will stand up and try to identify what are the areas where they can help to remove the roadblocks. Okay, so that's your daily stand-up. What is daily stand-up not? It's not a problem-solving session. So it's not like if you have a question, then you don't go about discussing daily stand-up. You have another forum or another meeting for solving your problems. Okay. Sprint review, we spoke about it. It's at the end of the sprint where we say that It is a place where we demo the system to your product owner, and you get the feedback. Typically, it takes form of a demo, and whole team participates in it. It's very informal in nature, and you get your feedback as one-to-one from your product owner and your stakeholders. Okay. Retrospective. That's a very important part of your sprint. What is a retrospective? When you do a knowledge, what do you say? In a SDLC, you perform lessons learned at the end of the project cycle. Here you do lessons learned in every sprint, after every small sprint. So, for example, if you see that within our team the communication was not good, this guy was very mean to me in XYZ. All these things comes out in your retrospect, and then the team members talks among themselves. Sometimes you order a pizza, you make that as a particular ceremony to say that, okay, we worked so hard in your sprint. Let's spend some time among ourselves, build the bridges. If you have broken something, you say sorry, say yes, no. But that's really time for team building activity. Other than that, you basically ask important questions like what I did good, or rather what the team did good, and then what we can do better. So every team member has got a forum to talk about what we can do better within a team. Or if somebody else, XYZ, who is outside a team member, he's interfering a lot, that's a forum where a team member can bring and say, okay, you know what, this guy is talking too much. We should have him or stonewall him or something like that. So this is the forum for that. So retrospective in a way is very effective to do a lessons learned in a continuous form, and then readjust your thoughts, readjust your values and your organizing capacity within a team, and affect it around your environment. You had a question on retrospective, right? What was that? So was it answered? Fine, right? Yeah.
And does this retrospective happen within the Scrum team?
Yeah, within a Scrum team, product owners generally attend. Even your Scrum Master actually leads the Scrum team, right? The retrospective, and it's a very forum of an open discussion, and it's about half an hour for every sprint. So when you're doing a sprint review for 4 hours, the next half an hour after the review is done, you really throw away the work out, and then just spend time with your team members and to seriously do a thinking with it, what we could have done better if we had certain amount of work. Lessons learned, yeah. Lessons learned for a big project is at the end of the project. We do it small at this time. So this framework really helps in that.
Does this also include the product owner?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It is product owners most of the time they don't want to attend.
Pizza is there.
Yeah.
Scrum Master does.
Scrum Master it does. Yeah.
Pizza is there, so product owner.
Yeah, the product owner he will come. It's a team building exercise.
The reason I brought that up is because when you have these kind of interpersonal meetings, I'm sure things happen, right? People talk
Yeah.
freely and all that.
Freely, yes.
They may or may not be that free if there are.
Yes, the product owners or something, yes. So most of the time, but it depends, right? The product owner over a period of time, they can create a environment where they want team members to talk about it, so that they can adjust within the sprints as well as beyond. Because everybody wants an excellent team rather than a sluggish one. Okay, so we are in the final stretch. We're looking for sprint metrics. So whatever work we do in this framework, it's not that we don't do accounting. We don't do whether the work is done or not. So the metrics, it really provides us the sight view about where the project is going, how is it going. So there are few matrices within a sprint or Scrum. It's a burn down chart, velocity chart. We'll go one by one in the next slides. Team capacity and the defect chart. So this is the typical sprint burn down chart. So initially, if you see the remaining effort, so at the sprint planning, you know how many points you have signed up for. Then you know when it ends. After say 20 days, that is 2 weeks. You're going to end your not 2 weeks. It's 4 weeks. You're going to end your sprint. So my 28 points are going to burn down till the end of the day in this fashion. So there's a straight line. That's the expected rate of burning down my work. But how it occurs? So in the initial phase, maybe I'm doing work slowly, so it's behind schedule. But at the end, in the middle of the sprint, I am really catching up and I'm ahead of the schedule. And so the red line is really the actual effort, and this effort is captured in the daily sprint meeting. So daily Scrum meeting which you have, you basically see what are the tasks that has been done, and that task mapping on the burn down chart is done by a Scrum Master. So he does that and he follows it up with this Scrum matrix. So this is important for a sprint, within a sprint, okay? Now this is the release burn up chart. So if you see now underneath the sprint number, the sprint, so there's pre-sprint, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 sprints. The red line tells you what is the total amount of user story plan. If you see the story wall, if you recall, the story wall, when it creates all the sprint story points, they add up together to form the red line. And then you see the planned velocity, the green line, that it says that, okay, this is my, the work will be done, say, initially it is like 30 points every sprint, I will add 30 points. If you keep adding 30 points over a period of time, it takes you to that green line at the end of the sprint number 11. And then you have the blue bars are really the ones that are actually being delivered every sprint. So if you see this chart gives you a release burn-up chart. It tells you how the release is progressing over a period of long number of sprints. Okay? So there are 3 components to it, onto this. Okay. Now this is an important factor for a team member. Now what is a velocity? Velocity again is a time and effort. So if you see initially the projected velocity, a team can say that we can do 83 points at the beginning. Then you come to say, then you really actually deliver only 37 points. That is near the 40 mark. That is the red line. Then over a period of time, they know that, okay, the velocity we cannot deliver more than, say, like 60 points. So that's a line that's drawing around 60 and 65 points. So typically, a velocity tells you what is the capacity of a team to deliver X amount of points within a sprint. Okay, so it's a team capacity of how much work can be done within a sprint by the Scrum team members. Okay, any questions? Okay, so typically team velocity defines the team capacity. Okay, another thing is the quantitative metrics. This typically is your defect rate, your how many stories have been accepted, what stories have been deferred. So whatever you say, we have to cancel a sprint, right? We have to cancel a particular sprint and move decompose the story. That scenario will be reflected in this quantitative metrics, where Scrum Master maintains this metrics for giving it to the stakeholders or presenting it to the stakeholders. So if you can say the total number of tests, the percentage of test coverage, these are all standard elements of testing. So finally, we come to the second last slide. The slide is scaling. That's scaling Scrum. There's a concept called Scrum of Scrums. Okay, Scrum of Scrums. That's the last slide we are going to talk about, and this slide is this one. So there are 4 Scrum teams. 4 Scrum teams, which you see. There is one small box. There is yellow box. It has been every Scrum Master of the 4 Scrum teams. They will be represented within a group of meeting called Scrum of Scrum teams. That's where they will discuss about what are the roadblocks within a Scrum team, what are the integration points within an application. So consider that these 4 blocks, they are 4 different applications, and 4 different applications owned by 4 different product owners and 4 different Scrum Masters. And those product owners and Scrum Masters, and of course the technology architects, they will form a Scrum of Scrums into one super team. And they will meet like once a week or twice a week, depending upon the requirement. And that concept of Scrum really helps in scaling your Scrum teams into an enterprise level. So you can think about a pyramid of Scrums happening over an entire enterprise into a larger project structure. So if you see a program management and a portfolio management can really happen at a very high level, and then you can have broken down Scrums and Scrum team members as you go down below. Any questions on Scrum of Scrums?
These Scrum of Scrums we are taking ahead where the team level, where you have defined your team, you have defined your overall, maybe you've done your overall plan, this particular team will take maybe this much hours and which you break down to a particular sprint.
So see, think about portfolio, right? You have a portfolio, in the portfolio you have 4 applications. And 4 applications, they are interlinked, interdependent, right? So in that 4 applications, so within an application, you will have your story wall. So there will be 4 story walls. And Scrum of Scrum can have its own story wall. That is called your strategic initiative. Say example, strategic initiative really defines your 4 applications that I want to be building within the next 3 years. So those decisions at the integration level will happen within that Scrum of Scrums. Okay, at a very portfolio level. But for the tactical purpose, so Scrum of Scrum is very strategic in nature, whereas your Scrum team members, they are very tactical in nature. Tactical means they are implementing the actual thought, the vision into building an application. Whereas the Scrum of Scrum, they are seeing whether the integration within the application is happening and whether there are any roadblocks that we can take care. Yes. It will happen at the same time. So the Scrum teams are meeting daily. Scrum of Scrums can happen like twice in a week to take the say parallel, yes, same parallelly. So if you can say a Scrum of Scrum can also be a reporting team to the higher management, right? So that way the vice president knows how his strategic initiative is going over a period of time.
And suppose there are 2 applications, one is team 4 and team, they need to be integrated. The Scrum of Scrum, that team will
Yes,
join
they will talk.
together.
Yes, they will talk together.
And their members will be, development team will be from this 4, they can add up some people, and from 2 they can add up some people.
They can. Yes.
And each of them will be different.
Very true. So there can be couple of approaches to that, right? Either you can have Scrum masters and a product owner who can talk along with the technology architects who can talk among themselves within Scrum of Scrums. If they want to, after they take the decision that okay, we need to integrate this at this aspect, then the developers can interact in a different team structure. They don't have to be part of the Scrum of Scrums because Scrum of Scrums is really your upper management, high management team members who talk on the strategic initiatives, who talk on the vision of the product, or talk on the what is a delivery, value delivery, not on how you integrate, what are the data elements and all that. That can be happen in a different meeting altogether.
And then how they will integrate this? Suppose they want to do some integration with that. Then they, out of Scrum, how they will go ahead.
They can talk with each other, right? I mean, they can form their own forum. So again, the concept of self-organizing team, where you really you allow the team member to create their own processes. We don't tell them, okay, now you have to create a change request, you have to build your design document and do this. Don't have to do that. Let them talk through in a very simple handoff. It can be even an IM or a telephone call, and then they can sit together, do a chat session to test the integration as they are talking. So that simplicity, that adaptability, it helps to quickly deliver. That's the importance of Agile.